It's time to strap in and get ready for the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Dan and Dirk are live in the studio today, ready to hear from you at 402-573-0590.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Today's live show brought to you by Archer Purdue Auto Sales. We'll have a front stretch car of the week coming up here in just a little bit, so make sure you stay tuned. Today's show, a big one for you. We're going to recap the Cup Series race at New Hampshire. We're going to recap our 2 days over at Iowa Speedway for the Xfinity Series race and their wrapped-up season for 2018. Turn number 2, we'll sit down with the head honcho for Jimmy Means Racing and talk about how he got into racing, his stories, his career, and all that kind of great stuff. And then in turn number 3, probably one of our favorite interview locations we've done in a long time, and she knocked it out of the park. McKenna Haase, driver of the number 55 360 sprint car at Knoxville, will help us preview the Knoxville Nationals for the 360s coming up this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's going to be in turn number 3. And then in turn number 4, we will preview today's race at Pocono. And let me tell you, everything that's going on at Pocono is worth an entire show. So we're going to try to talk fast. We're going to stay to the point because, man, have we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get it all covered right there.
Absolutely. And then a big congratulations to Holly and her husband, Paul, who were our winners for the Pick'ems contest presented by Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners and powered by Iowa Speedway and Jimmy Means Racing. What a great experience. Those two, once again, you could see their normal eye position, and then as soon as they got there, it doubled, and they looked like they had deer in the headlights. They were just, oh my God.
Great experience is an understatement.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Don't worry, we have one more Crewman for a Day contest we are working on. We've gotten approval through Kansas Speedway to do another one down there. We're just trying to figure out what team we're going to be able to do it with. We made some great contacts this weekend, and I don't think it's premature to say we're becoming friends with some Chevy people that we may be doing it with a heavy Chevy team. So that could spell. Now, that could also mean it's Starcom Racing again, but we'll have access to some Chevy drivers that we haven't had in the past. So stay tuned for that. We'll hopefully be announcing that next coming weeks. All right, I want to get to New Hampshire and talk about that real quick because that ended up being an amazing race. I've never been a big fan of New Hampshire. I thought it was a long-run race that tend to spread the field out, but that's not what we saw on Sunday.
Well, yeah, it's hard to spread out on a 1 mile track, but you still had your haves and your have-nots. But it seemed like up there that gap was a lot smaller than normal.
Yeah,
You had several leaders, which was nice. I mean, you got a little controversy again, and how come it's every time we get these bump and runs and stuff, the 18 is either bumping or being bumped? What's up with that?
I think my easiest answer with that is he's one of the most talented guys out there, so he's probably going to be the one getting moved or doing the moving in order to win the race, because he's probably going to be the one up there in the position. If he's back in 10th, no one's bumping and running him.
Yeah.
That's the easiest. And these are the two of the best. I mean, I think we're looking at the championship battle, but you come into the playoffs and it could be anybody's game. I mean, we saw it last year, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but Kyle Larson will be the example of how the wheels can come off of a championship run incredibly fast. He was
absolutely
so strong walking into that first round, and it disintegrated. And 3 finishes outside of the top 30, and terrible luck, engine failures. That's going to be the example that everyone's going to use when they say, yes, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are the 2 best, but nobody's foolproof when it comes to the playoff system.
Nobody's exempt from the old X factor.
Exactly. And that's what I love about the playoffs. The system that we had before, you could walk in with a massive point advantage and cruise your way the last 13 races to win the championship. You can't do that anymore. And we haven't been able to do that since the chase system was created and it was modified to the playoff system. I really love this system, and I think that in 5-10 years we'll be talking about how great it is, and we won't worry about the old system anymore.
Yeah, well, as long as they don't refer to it as a season championship, I'm fine. Well, because it's not anymore.
But it is. You still have to be consistent in order to win a championship. That's the same thing that harkens back to the old days.
Well, but let's just go back to what you just said. If you had a big points lead with a dozen races to go, you could backdoor and just slide in there, just show up and race,
How exciting is that?
But
my driver's got a 200-point advantage going into the last 12 races, and he just sits back in the 20th position.
You can't be in 12th place in the playoffs and win the title and be a season champion.
Right. You've got to drive every single race.
You can't be 12th to start the playoffs and be a season champion.
Sure.
No.
Why can't you?
You can win the title, but you didn't win the points championship.
So Tony Stewart hasn't won 2 season championships?
No, he's won 2 titles, but they weren't season championships.
Jesus. Splitting hairs, but that's okay. All right, let's move over to Iowa Speedway. Great race over there, and I'll give a little commentary I was thinking about on the way into the show today. After the Truck Series race at Eldora, there's all this talk about when are we going to move to short tracks? When are we going to move to more dirt tracks? When are we going to do this? And I'm going to say something very incredibly frank right now. NASCAR has zero interest in taking a Cup Series race to Iowa Speedway if that's the way fans are going to turn out. You had an absolutely gorgeous day yesterday with a slight chance of rain. For a $20 bill, maybe a $30 bill, you could have gone and watched the next tier of drivers competing. And it was a fantastic race on a fantastic track with a beautiful everything. And
75 degrees outside.
And if that's the way this area is going to support a NASCAR race, forget about ever going to Iowa for the Cup Series. Forget about it.
Yeah, there were not 10,000 people there.
Not a chance. And quite frankly, I said it to you in private. I don't know if I should say it. I'm really worried about that track.
Well,
in a couple of years, if it doesn't drastically change, we're going to be talking about how great it was when we had a NASCAR race at Newton, Iowa. But now we don't anymore, and there's grass growing on that asphalt.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the grass growing on the asphalt because I think they'll be able to, sustain with driving schools and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they brought David Hyatt in this year, to try and do some improving and stuff. And I'm willing to stake that they're going to give him at least like a 3-year run to see if he can do something.
I think so. But
so
if the big opportunity for Iowa Speedway is when those 5-year contracts end in 2020. Iowa Speedway is in a position that they could get a race in 2021, and I think it would come from Indianapolis. That's just my gut feeling. But the way the fans have turned out this year, I give you a break for the earlier race because it was hot and it was miserable, and sitting out in that track is not fun for 3.5, 4 hours, even though the race was only about 2 hours. Sitting out in that track in the heat and the exhaustion, it's not that fun. I give you a break on that one. Yesterday, there was zero excuse. I don't care if there was a 50% chance of rain in the area at 3 o'clock. It didn't rain. It all cleared out. If you'd have gotten in your car and come over and supported the race, we could be talking about a better chance of a Cup Series race at Iowa Speedway in 2020.
Yeah, and it goes down to, even the local area people, I know there were still some, Omaha area, Nebraska type people that were over there, but not even, Des Moines got some people,
There's plenty of people to support it. I mean, Kansas Speedway shows it. That I realize that Kansas is within a massive metropolitan area, but the amount of people that they pull, their second market is Omaha.
Right.
Their third market is Des Moines. So if their second and third market,
I would say their third market's St. Louis, but
yeah. But he's told me their third market is Des Moines. So why isn't Iowa Speedway having better success? Anyways,
one thing with last night though is you lost your sprint car fans when Tony Stewart decided to be at Knoxville last night.
Okay, but what time did the race get over with? 6:30?
Oh no! They went to the red flag right about 7 o'clock. Okay. So the race probably didn't end till close to 7:30. Mm-hmm. So it kind of screwed up because we knew some people that were going to try and do the doubleheader. Yeah.
Yep.
So if they stayed till the end of the race, and by the time you take a little traffic time, which wouldn't have been too bad yesterday,
but what a great race it turned out to be. It was a real battle between Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Justin Allgaier, and Austin Cindric was up there for a very long time. And we had 2 long green flag runs, but when the last 10, 15 laps came down, it was a complete shootout.
Well, they went to a green-white checker, and Christopher Bell on the point, Allgaier in fourth. And when they came out of turn 2, it was Allgaier in front and Christopher Bell in fourth, you know. And the other two guys in second and third were still there, but then there was a big crash and another green-white checker.
Yeah.
And so Christopher Bell restarts in fourth, and by the time they came back and took the white flag, he was in front.
Yeah, absolutely great. I mean, he just drove it down to the corner. They were 4 wide going into turn 4 at one time. And I remember David Starr talking about it earlier in the race. They were talking about the K&N race on Friday night, and he goes, "You can go 4 wide into turn 1 all you want to. You're not coming out 4 wide out of turn 2. You better figure something out right in the middle of that corner, or there's going to be a pileup." And that's what they did 2 different times. That first restart you were talking about with the green-white checker, they went in 4 wide. Allgaier got the better run off the corner and took the lead, and Custer and Bell fell back to 4th. And then the next time, it was Bell that was able to get the better run off the corner. It was a great race.
And David Starr and his people, we owe them a big thank you for the contest. And he picked up, again, for the second year in a row, honestwrenches.com there out of Ankeny. Seemed like a great group of guys, and they brought a bunch of people down and hung out. And but Travis and his bunch are really cool. Holly and Paul had an exceptional time. The one thing we didn't get was our darn sign, because
I know.
it went to the Honest Wrenches people. But we were trying to – they do these signs above the garages, and they're kind of cool. We had one last year – or no, the year before last we got from Brendan Gaughan. Or was it the first race last year?
I think it was the first race last year.
Yeah.
Because it sat in my basement for a long time, and I didn't know if I was going to give it away or not. Might have been one of those things that I forgot about. But
yeah, again, a great deal there. Jessica did her thing. You know, we got to introduce him to the track president. And Dan and I actually went into the interview room when they had Elliott Sadler was sponsored by US Cellular, who was the main sponsor for the race yesterday, and has been, what, they said 8 years now?
10 years. It's a 10-year anniversary. The, US Cellular has been a part of Iowa Speedway since the day it opened, but they have been the title sponsor of the second Xfinity Series race for 10 years now.
They haven't had Xfinity race. Well, yeah, this would have been the 10th year. This would have been the 10th year. But real nice interview, and where they passed the mic around, and I actually asked a question, which was kind of fun, which actually led to a nice conversation with another person in the room.
And didn't get us kicked out, so thank you for that. I always worry about that. When you raised your hand, I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Where's he going? Where's this going?
We had just finished having lunch with NASCAR's guy that runs these interviews, a guy by the name of Matt Humphrey, and we'd met Matt several years ago. And then the track marketing director, Edward Williams, was eating with us, and they're like, well, we got Elliott Sadler, you know, in the interview room in 15 minutes. You guys need to be there. And we're like, yeah, well, looks like we are now.
We're not, just because of some stuff with his PR people, we're not big fans of Elliott Sadler, but that's something that we'll have to let go, because he seemed like a very nice guy.
But, well, and I thought he did great with his questions. Yeah. You know, and the dirt track deal was asked of him, you know, and he was very concise on his answer, and it brought up a good point about how the dirt race right now with the trucks is their niche. Yeah. You know, that's their one thing that everybody knows is just the trucks. The
trucks at Eldora is the most common thing that we talk about.
And
with trucks.
He says the Xfinity Series has their Dash for Cash deal. Their 4 races where they've got, you know, $100,000 on the line, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and he said as long as each series can have their niche, it is really going to be better for that series.
And I think the Cup Series is niche. What he didn't mention, and I could possibly be wrong because he's a heck of a lot smarter than I am.
Well,
is the Cup Series' niche is their superstars. They've got the drawing power for those superstars, to where the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, they haven't been around long enough to have those superstar names. Or to the other end of it, they're on the backside of their career, like Elliott is, where he had that stardom, had a shot in the Cup Series. Now he's down, kind of winding his career down in the Xfinity Series. But I think that's what the Cup Series has, is their star power. They can easily draw just simply off of their names. You don't have to really focus on the racing aspect.
Well, the names are recognizable.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, even as, you know, they talked about the young guns and all this type of stuff, you know, not doing anything, and that's all anybody advertises.
It's pretty tough for the young guns to do stuff when Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick are winning everything.
Well, exactly. But it like, you know, those guys even made the point, you know, how about we get a little love, you know, because we're the ones winning the races. Now, you go at the Xfinity Series, and what's Christopher Bell, 19?
Yeah.
18?
Yep.
He's still a kid.
3 wins in a row now
First time since 1999 with Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah.
You know, so he's obviously getting it done. Now, he does have the advantage where they've cut back the Cup schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but back in 99 when Earnhardt Jr. won 3 races in a row, there weren't too many Cup drivers in the series either. So
right.
it's that was a phenomenon that came around about 2005 with Carl Edwards was kind of the first guy to do a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You know, he was running double duty in both series for a couple of years. Then Brad Keselowski started that. So those two guys are why we have the rule now that the Cup drivers aren't there, and there were no Cup drivers there yesterday.
Right. And there haven't been the last two races. Back earlier in June, there weren't any Cup guys there, and I think it's simply because they're going to wait and race in a race where it's going to be more advantageous to their Cup race.
Right, to get track time on the track, so a triple header weekend type deal.
If there was a Cup Series race at Iowa, you would see a lot more Iowa Xfinity Series races with Cup Series guys in them, like we've seen in the past. Before, when it wasn't restricted, they loved coming and racing here.
Oh, the helicopters and the jets would be coming in race day morning from Pocono.
Oh, yeah.
You know, on the Saturday, and after they did whatever their practice or whatever, 3 or 4 of the cars, you'd always have Keselowski there, you'd always have Carl Edwards there, and their cars were always qualified by somebody else, so they were coming through the field from the back, which was always good racing to watch,
right.
You know, so...
But, that was our weekend over at Iowa Speedway. There was a lot left we need to cover. Maybe we'll talk about it in stories at another time because we just had an absolutely fantastic time. Thank you to everybody that was involved in the contest, from Jessica and David and Jimmy Means over at Jimmy Means Racing to William and Matt Humphrey over at NASCAR and Iowa Speedway, and on down to Rick Havenridge, the sponsor of the event, the contest that allow us to do it, and everybody that participated. About 75 people joined the contest, and I still talk more and more about people about this contest, and they're like, wait, and that's all free? We get to do all of that for free. Yeah, you don't have to pay a thing. You have to get there, and then you got a hotel room, but that's it. I mean, that's expenses you would have normally if you had to buy a ticket. And I remember one thing Paul said. He goes, I kind of thought this was going to be a lot like those fan walks that we buy. This is nothing like those fan walks. I can't believe what we get. And it's an awesome experience and something you should definitely get involved in. If you want to find out more, just send us an email, frontstretchradio@gmail.com. We have the next contest. We're going to be getting started in a couple of weeks with Kansas Speedway, so we'll be getting those details out soon, and we'll add you into the email list and send those off. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2, and we're going to sit down with the head honcho of Jimmy Means Racing. We'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you White Knuckle Racing by the River bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the Front Stretch.
You know, it never fails me that liner has more meaning when we come into turn 2 than I expected it when we created it.
Why is that?
Because we're coming in with a little more attitude, and we're talking to Jimmy Means Racing. That could have worked if we were talking to McKenna Haase, because she's got a little attitude too. She's a little sassy, but we like that. We like that about her. All right, while we were over at Iowa Speedway, we had the opportunity to sit down with Jimmy Means, and we talked a little bit about his health off the microphone. He's doing great. He's recovering well. Expects to be at the track more often now that he had that heart attack and he's fully recovered from it. So, well, as recovered as you can be from a heart attack.
And he's got a woman in his life that's making sure he does what he's supposed to do.
She is. So we sat down with the head honcho of Jimmy Means Racing to discuss his career and path to becoming the owner of the number 52 Xfinity Series Chevy, driven by David Starr of David Starr Racing. We kick things off about how he got started into racing.
Well, you know, it just started out as being something that a kid wanted to do. You know, you go through early in life and as a teenager, you know, what are you going to do with your life, you know? And thought about, are you going to be a policeman, a fireman? One thought about going in the Army. And I graduated high school at the same time as the Vietnam War was at its height, and I had the aspirations of being a helicopter pilot. But I think I got over that because I'd probably been the first thing that went down would have been a helicopter. So, I got my college deferment. Went to college for a month, and I said, man, this is not for me. So I started building a race car, and luckily for me, and they changed the format as far as the draft. And went to the lottery system, and I had a high number and didn't get called. So, I pursued my racing, and it turned out to be my life. So, we typical of the time and the day, we started with nothing, from, junkyard parts and junkyard engine, and fortunate enough to be able to put it together. And somehow we were successful, and we won races, and we beat. At the time, we ran, 3 nights a week: Huntsville, Alabama, Birmingham, and Nashville. And in those days, we were racing against Darrell Waltrip, Donnie Allison, Bobby Allison, Neil Bonnet, Red Farmer, and heck, we beat them. And we won. At one point in time, we were leading the points 3 of those racetracks at the same time, and we wound up winning 2 of them the same year.
Growing up as a young kid, were you at a racetrack every Friday and Saturday, or was this something you kind of started to get into as you got older?
Well, my first recollections of wanting, being interested. I didn't even know I wanted to be a driver. I had a paper out at 12 or 13 years old, and it was raining, and I went to collect on my route, and a lady invited me in because it was, for a check, because it was, it was wet and raining. So there was a program from Hampshire Speedway laying on their coffee table, and I said, "Do you mind if I look at this program?" And from that moment, I looked at that program. I was hooked.
That's insane that it's a program that's sitting on a coffee table that is what it got you hooked. 99% of the people say it was the first time their parents took them and they heard the roar of the engines and the lifestyle.
I mean, I grew up. My family wasn't poor, but we didn't have a car growing up. So everywhere I went on a bicycle, and I used to get my friends to take me to Hampshire Speedway to watch the races, and I would find somebody to bring me back home. So, I was, ever since I was probably 15 and 16 years old, I was going to races. It's probably and it was by myself.
You say that you find somebody to bring you home. Boy, times have changed, haven't it?
Oh Lord, yeah. I mean, we used to drive a ride or bicycle everywhere, and when I did get a car, it was, Huntsville, Alabama was an Army base, and if we saw a man in uniform, we gave him a ride. They never walked, and we didn't. No worries, no scared. Wasn't scared of anything. But Lord, has it changed? The world's not a good place.
So after that deferment, going back to you considered going into college, thought about being a helicopter pilot, thought better of it, decided to go to college. Between becoming a race car driver and leaving college, was there consideration of going back into the Army and taking that route?
No, because the war was on the news, and that was like, man, maybe I need to rethink what I was, what I wanted to do, because you see all these deals. The helicopter was the first thing that got shot down. So it was just a phase that I went through, and something, maybe I want to do this, because you're searching at that time. What do you want to do? And I didn't really know.
Well, flying that helicopter would have been a lot more dangerous than crawling into a race car.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that every time I see a man in uniform, I thank them and I appreciate what they've done for our country. So, there's people that didn't come back, and I'm still here and doing, my life's dream of racing, and they sacrificed theirs so I can do what I do.
So you were running the 3-night circuit there in Alabama and up into Tennessee. And when did you finally transition and try and go and say, I think these boys that race on Sundays and that, what they call the Grand National Series back then still, right. I believe. Yeah. When did you transition over?
We'd won the National Track Championship the year before, and we're going to win it the next year. And we lost the lead to a low. I was the first guy that ever won it from out of state the year before, and we stripped our rear end gears on that one race, and they had 4 more races left on the schedule, and they didn't run them. And I lost the lead that night to the local guy, and they never ran another race. So I said, I think I just got screwed. But then then that winter, there was a guy in Birmingham, and I can't remember his name. He said he bought some Winston Cup parts for a Grand National car for somebody else, and they wasn't going to do anything with it. So I got a few parts. If you want them, you can have them. So I took those few parts, and we built a Cup car, and made our first Daytona 500. We blew an engine because we didn't have the high dollar parts in it, and we really didn't finish the race that year until somebody bought me a real racing crank, and then we started finishing 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, and we kind of progressed from there to maybe getting back to the story. I did it Cup racing, hopefully that I could make a living. So I got married, and my first kid was on the way. So just hopefully that I could make a living. I didn't have aspirations of being Richard Petty or David Pearson. I wanted to make a living and doing something that I liked.
It's one thing to be able to make a living, but when you're doing what you love is kind of a completely different thing.
Well, I mean, I've been doing this, almost for a living, almost 47 years, and for probably 46 of those years, I said I never worked a day in my life. But now it's work, and it's wearing on me a little bit. But I mean, I had a few jobs during the winter to make money, to buy parts, to get, to finish your race car. But the clock on the wall never moved. And when you're working for yourself and working on that race car, man, that thing is an overtime. You want to go over and turn that clock back because there's never enough time.
Absolutely. So take us to the transition of being the driver. You're having a great career, and what was the point that was able to move into the ownership?
Actually, when I first tried it, after I quit driving myself, in ownership in the Cup, it really didn't work. We missed a few races, and and when you go and miss, which means you spent $7,000 to $10,000 to try to attempt that race. So we missed like 4 or 5 races, so that puts you in a hole. And I said, man, I don't see the light to come out of this to make any money doing it. So that's when I went to work with I think it was Bud Moore's first job I had after racing, and then he lost sponsorships, and he went out of business. And then I went to work for actually Bob Jenkins of Front Row Motorsports and I formed a company together, and then I think he bought me out of what our partnership was. But then I went to work for him as a consultant and a spotter, whatever. And then I was up on the spotter stand, and there's watching the Busch cars practice. I said, man, there's not enough cars out there. I said, maybe I need to get back in it. So that's what I did that probably in 98, and I've been doing it ever since. So it was kind of a give me at the time that if you showed up, you could make the race.
And there's a little bit more economic sense when you can make the race and get that purse rather than, like you were talking about with the Cup, spending $7,000 to $10,000 to not even make the race and you don't get paid anything.
My whole career, we basically, I've been fortunate a few years in my career that I've had a sponsor to help pay the bills. But no, if you don't make the purse, you don't survive.
Is the purse money enough to help a team along?
Well,
because it could always be more.
Oh, I've survived by making chicken salad out of chicken all my life. So, and if you can't do that, then a guy like me doesn't survive. And these guys that go out there and try to do this without that ability don't make it. They don't last.
It's a tough sport, and the sponsors are everything. And it's amazing when you think about it at the end of the year that somebody's willing to give you this amount of money to do your dream.
At the same time, you hope that you can give that sponsor some return on their investment. So and I think for our budget, I think we run. We're if you were a baseball team, we're betting 500. We're fair. Given the money we have to race with, we beat a lot of guys that got way more money than we do.
And that's got to be a very special day for you when you're able to get a 15th to 10th place finish, and you can beat a lot of those guys who have a bigger budget than you. Is that an extra special day for you?
It is, and sometimes some things you like to brag about it, but a lot of those guys that you beat hip you. And case in point, we were with Joey Gates of Iowa native. We were lucky enough, no, I wouldn't say lucky. We were just good. We finished 5th at Talladega, and we had used motor parts from Hendricks Motors Company. And we beat every Hendricks car there with their used stuff. So that's something you don't brag about, but we should appreciate their help.
And you certainly enjoyed the purse check.
But that's the sad part.
Yeah.
It wasn't what you would think it would be.
Yeah.
It was, we were actually we're racing right now for 25 to 30% less purse money than we were in 08.
Wow.
And the expenses are up 35 to 40% more.
So if NASCAR was to come to Jimmy Means and say, Jimmy, give us one thing on your list that you would like us to do different to help improve the sport, can you give me just one?
Well, they do so much to try to make it,
And let me just say, it's not to make it sound like you think they're doing a bunch of stuff wrong, but if there's one thing that would help Jimmy Means Racing.
Well, the only thing that helps Jimmy Means Racing is have some budget. Something to, we're fortunate that we get a lot of help from different teams. We buy used cars, used chassis, used motor parts, and without that, we wouldn't be here at all. So, but there's, just give us something to race for. Give us some, incentive, which just means a little bit more purse money. And don't take, they got what was it, $10 billion on that TV deal, and I think the racetracks got 65%. The competitors, which is Cup, basically got, I don't know how much our part of it is. They got 25%, and then NASCAR got 10%. Cut some of that down from the racetracks. I know they put a lot of expense into it, but it takes us, without us being here, they don't have a show.
Jimmy Means of Jimmy Means Racing, sir, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
And that was a great interview with Jimmy Means. If you missed any portion of it, it will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow morning at about 10 or 11 a.m. once we get that posted.
I hope he never opens a restaurant.
Yeah, I'm not eating the chicken salad, that's for darn sure. We're going to take a break. McKenna Haase just around the corner on the front stretch.
Hey, look at that. You're sitting on your couch playing Halo, Madden, or NASCAR while your friends are at Joe's Karting. Each lap is an adrenaline-filled, heart-pumping, white-knuckle experience that you can only get at the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Eco-friendly Honda engines rip you around the professionally designed road course at breakneck speeds. Can you reach the 14-second lap bracket? There's only one way to find out. Put the controller down and get to Joe's Karting, 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs next to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Today's live show on the front stretch is brought to you by Archer Purdue Auto Sales, located at 14227 S Street in Omaha. They open up at noon today. You can get more information at 402-891-1100. Dirk, what's our front stretch deal of the day?
They have got a 2008 Dodge Ram crew cab, fully loaded, 4x4 for $13,900. They get over on their website at archerpurdue.com. You can check out their complete inventory. You can make sure on their store hours, because they've been doing some summer hours because they've had a bunch of construction going on right out there.
Construction?
And
you say?
They don't have the streets tore up, but they've been doing a bunch of that stuff. I don't know if it's all fiber optic stuff that they're doing it under the curbs and everything. And I know I stopped out there a week ago or so, and they'd whacked their phone line. So Brian was having all the phone calls routed to his cell phone and drove himself crazy. But that's the home of the original and one and only, as far as I know, $149 a month payment, but just across the street on Millard Avenue, just on the west side from the Amazing Pizza Machine.
Get them today, Archer Purdue Auto Sales. Thanks to those guys for sponsoring today's live show on the front stretch.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
Yeah, buddy, we're going to diamond this baby off and get a good run out of turn number 4. Welcome back to the front stretch. We caught up with McKenna Haase on Friday night at... It ended up being one of our favorite interviews.
Definitely unique.
In the background, if you listen really closely, you can hear the locusts sitting in the tree behind us. But we sat down with McKenna around marshmallows, fire, and locusts to talk about her season, her life.
We never got a s'more.
I know. And the life. Well, she told us that she likes to burn them. I didn't want a s'more from her. But we talked about her life and thoughts on the Nationals as we're getting set for the 360 Nationals at Knoxville this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We also started off by talking about how she had 2 wins already on the season.
Yeah, thank you. We've had a really, really good year. We've had a couple wins at Knoxville. We've been outside of Knoxville a few times, got a Trophy Dash win at Donaldson. We've had a lot of good top 10 runs at Knoxville also, but mostly feeling really confident going into Nationals, which is, I wouldn't say something that I would always have said. I really think that this year we have a really good team, just like really good crew and just a lot of confidence right now. And so I think if the luck can fall our way, I think we hope to have a good run.
Yeah, I think a lot of drivers, if they could pick their ratio of luck to talent, would go 70-30 in the favor of luck. Because you can have all the talent in the world, but if luck isn't on your side.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky and have no talent, you've got a better chance of winning.
Yeah, I think especially at Nationals, like it all starts with that envelope that you draw. I think that's the most nerve-wracking moment when you pick the envelope, and like that really dictates like so much of the whole rest of your week, which is so scary. This year I literally have drawn terrible. Like I've been last out to qualify, I feel like every single night, which doesn't mean you can't qualify well, but it definitely hurts your chances. And at Knoxville, you got to be up front if you want a shot to win, or it's just so hard to move forward from the back. And I would know I've been in the back plenty of times this year, and we've been able to always move through the field, but to win, you got to put yourself in a position to.
That's another one of those aspects of sprint car racing that if you do have a bad draw, you have really got to figure out how to navigate the field and get through them cleanly and quickly.
Yeah, I think going out late in qualifying, in my personal opinion, you always got to rip the bottom, and you can't kill your momentum down there. And when you only have 2 laps to do it, oftentimes you end up throwing one of the laps, and then you better kill the second, and that can be really tough to do. And we've done it some nights this year, and other nights we definitely have not. And that's really, really bad if you come off the track with that bad of a time. You normally start in the front row of a heat race and win it, and then start mid-pack in the future. If you qualify really bad, though, you got to go to the back of your heat race, and then you're really in a bad spot, which is where we were last weekend. We were able to still move forward and make the A and do all that, but yeah, and then you start in the back of the A. And so I think you don't even have to qualify, number 1, but because then they're gonna invert your heat, but if you can at least be solid in qualifying in your heat, you'll be in a good position. When
you were setting out your goals for this year, are you surprised that you're at 2 wins already?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel bad saying that because obviously, you should want to win. I can't really say that we went into this year. We want to win, but I wouldn't say we went into this year with any record-breaking mentality necessarily. Last year was our rookie year. I think we ran 7th. Maybe was our highest finish at Knoxville last year, and we had a new crew last year, and then we had a new crew this year. And so I remember the night before I won, I think we ran like 11th, and then we won. And so to go from like 11th to winning was just kind of unexpected. I just learned a ton as a driver this year. Like just a ton, like a lot of stuff started clicking. And I knew that coming off of last year. Like there were so many things as a driver I was frustrated with because it's like I know where I'm screwing up, but I need practice in order to fix it. And I think finally it just clicked. And after we got the second win, or the first win, I was like, man, like to get another, my crew chief was like, oh, I think we can get, maybe 1 or 2 more. I'm like, well, I'm glad you're feeling confident, because I knew the competition would only get harder as the year went on, and the track was going to be trickier. And so I'm like, all right, because not that we'd been doing bad, but it wasn't like, I don't know what made him think that, I guess. And next thing you know, we go right out after that and win again with a good qualifying and heat run. And I think that just goes to show my crew chief and I this year, we just are really clicking, and he's been just instrumental for me as a driver, but then also with the car. We just have a really good bond, and I think that's made a big change to our program this year, and that's another reason.
So exactly how much input do you have on the actual setup for, when race time comes? Obviously, you're giving feedback between the heat, qualifying the heat, and then the heat and the feature. but how much of that feedback, are you saying, I want this shock set up, I want this torsion bar set up? What are you doing there?
My crew chief has actually been with USAC for 9 years, and so he's been doing a lot of non-wing stuff. He's also done some winged stuff, but he's been out in California, and so to come back to Knoxville and do a half mile with a wing, he was upfront and said it would be a learning curve for him too. And so I think early on this season, I shared a lot of what kind of I used to run or what I used to like, and he's really good with shocks, and so that was one thing that I kind of let him go ahead and do his thing on. But yeah, I think early in the year I would put input on, when it came to just tire pressures and just things that I'm particular about. But I think once we started seeing good results and I had built that trust in him, I don't put as much input in anymore. I just let him kind of go. So,
and that's a really key relationship. A lot of people will compare that to a NASCAR team with the crew chief driver relationship, and they don't really see it a lot in dirt racing. But that is really important for you that you have a good crew chief, because I know you've had crew chiefs in the past where you've had friction with, and both of you could have been very talented and right. But if you guys aren't jiving on the same level, the team's not going to be successful.
Right. I think anybody that's touched my car has, they've all been really good, really experienced, really great. All of them have. But I just think with the one we have now, it's just, like you said, just in terms of our personalities and mentalities, I just think we've clicked more than probably anybody.
Can we call him by name? Or
John.
do we keep referring to him as him, like he's Lord Voldemort?
Sorry.
We can't say the name we cannot speak of.
John C. Anderson.
John C. Anderson. He's got a middle initial?
He does.
That's very prestigious.
There's many John Andersons in Knoxville, apparently. So,
really?
Yeah.
We touched a little bit on the 360 Nationals. That's personally my favorite, oddly enough to say, over the 410 Nationals. Does having 2 wins on the year and being in your second year in a 360 at Knoxville for a weekly, does that give you more advantage over the traveling guys that are going to come in and compete with you next weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I think, last year going into Nationals, when you look at just my mentality last year versus this year, I just have a much different mentality. I think it really comes down to, in my opinion, you and the race car. You can't control anybody else out there. It doesn't matter who they are. But I think for me, I know I have really good equipment. I know I have a really good crew chief. I know that we've had obviously plenty of laps around Knoxville this year. And most of all, for me as a driver, I've just improved so much this year and really, I feel figured the track out a lot better. And so I think combining all of those ingredients, you're going to be, in my opinion, in a spot to be just as good if, again, like you said, if luck's on your side and, if I can do my job as a driver and everything can come together. And so our goal is to make the A main. I guess we'll take it from there. But, if luck's on our side, I think we're definitely in a spot to do just as good as hopefully anybody.
I kind of asked that question because I feel like being a weekly driver at Knoxville for the 410s, take Brian Brown. I don't think Brian Brown has any more advantage winning the 410 Nationals than anybody else that comes in, obviously because there's guys like Donnie Schatz that comes in and he's the man at the 410 Nationals. But I kind of wanted to get the idea of what it would be like for the 360s. Is it the same or is it a little bit different?
I mean, we, obviously guys like Brian Brown and, they're coming down to race with us, and obviously they're going to be fantastic. I mean, like I said, it's, to beat those guys, I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult, but still possible. And so, I guess you could say ASCS is technically kind of the Outlaws, like you were talking about, coming back in, but I feel like that's a lot different from Donnie Schatz, coming to Knoxville, or they don't have that level of experience like he does around that place for that long. And so I think no matter what, the competition's going to be stout, but I don't think you can't let that get into your head. You've just kind of got to focus on yourself and treat it just like any other race.
I've thoroughly enjoyed your Facebook post, because a lot of times when you post as McKenna Haase, the sprint car driver, there's a lot of inspirational posts behind it. Are you seeing kind of a future in maybe kind of inspirational aspects, maybe writing a book about, dealing with modern difficulties and kind of stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we just released the Be Real campaign today or yesterday, and that's a very, 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 that lies really close to my heart this season. One thing I don't like to hear, and not in a bad way necessarily, but you'll hear a lot of fans say I want to be just like you someday, or I wish I could be you. And I don't want people to think that. I try to be really careful with what I post because I want to promote people being themselves and being happy with who they are. And I've seen firsthand that like social media does not portray the real story ever, in good ways and bad. I think for me, I think, you know, you don't probably see a lot of the backside of things, especially with my racing career, the dark side, the things that I've had to go through. I think a lot of people see the happy stuff or the things that you want people to see. And not the dark stuff. And also, yeah, I post these ninja videos and these race car driver things, and I understand that not everybody can be a ninja or a race car driver, but I do know that everybody has a purpose. And so I want people to know that you're not defined by what you do, you're defined by who you are. And so this whole photo shoot we just did is basically, for the most part, no makeup, pretty much natural hair, no like sex appeal, just simple dresses, no jewelry, just raw. And we just wanted to be real with it. And I just want people to know that it doesn't matter who the race car driver is in the world. When they go home, they're a person. It doesn't matter if you're Donnie Schatz or whomever. I mean, everybody's a person. And so, yeah, I really want to promote that. And I don't want people I want to inspire people in a way that they feel like they can accomplish something, not that they're just sitting there watching something that can't be accomplished. And so even with Ninja, it's like I was not always that good by any means, and I still am not nearly as good as so many others, and vice versa. I mean, we have cheerleaders on my team, IT guys on my team, you know, dads. I mean, you name it, and you just try your best. I mean, you can only do what you can do, and as long as you're trying, I think that's what matters. And especially in terms of racing this season, we've experienced a ton of negativity. Especially on social media, and not just towards me, but just the sport in general. And I just hate to see that because, you know, no matter what people are feeling, I just think you never know what somebody's going through. You know, when you're sitting there bashing people on social media, like, you never know what they might be going through, and how your comments might affect them, whether you think it's justified or not. And so, and I just think it creates so much tension in our sport that people don't always like to recognize. And so, some of what I have been writing about this year, I've been doing some blogs for Speedway Motors, and you know, I've just tried to put a huge spotlight on some of what I feel are these emotional or mental tensions in our industry, and bringing them out and discussing as an industry like how we can overcome them.
We get into it probably every other show where we tell the negative people to just quit, just stop it. If it's all you're going to say is bad stuff, leave the racetrack alone, and let everybody else enjoy it if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, it's terrible. And I know there was one of your posts, it's been several months ago now, but somebody was giving you some grief, and I remember saying, so how many features have you won at Knoxville? The guy never posted again, you know.
Yeah, I think, so I work with youth racers, and I was talking to one of our parents and stuff, and they were experiencing some negativity on social media, and they said, well, what do you think we should do? I said, look, here's how I look at it in anything in racing. No matter how you feel, before you do anything, before you tweet or before you make an action or whatever you're going to do, you have a choice. You have one of three choices. Number one, you can choose to make our sport worse. You can choose to keep it the same, or you can choose to make it better. And, you know, by creating negativity on social media, you might think you're feeling better by, you know what I mean, letting your opinion get out there. But in all actuality, you're producing more negativity, right? Like, you're making our sport worse. If you don't do anything, you know, it's just going to stay the same, or you have a chance to make it better. And by make it better, I even mean in negative situations, you know. I'm not perfect. You know, I'll be the first to admit I'm so not perfect. But I think that's part of being real, is saying like, hey, here's my imperfections, but here's how I'm trying to overcome them. And, you know, I think that's the other thing a lot of people struggle with, is like when they stay closed off like that, it makes them feel so like alone, you know, and it just creates this negative cycle. And I think as a whole, racing is no different than life. Like, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be people you don't like. There's going to be unfair situations, and that's just going to be the way it is. And you can sit there and talk about it, or, you know, you can make it better. And I think we as an industry are so far, we have so much potential. It's ridiculous how much potential we have. And I think even as the drivers, we could so come together. The drivers in the pits could. And just put our differences aside and put our competitiveness aside and do things with each other that would benefit the industry. And
to that point, I think the only time I see the real beauty come out as a whole in this sport is, unfortunately, when we lose somebody. You know, we lose somebody like Jason Johnson, and the entire industry comes together and says, I don't care if you push me too hard into 3 that time. Let's pass the helmet. Let's raise some money. Let's make some stickers up. Let's send some money over to their family to help them out. Unfortunately, that's the only time that we see that unity that you're kind of talking about.
Exactly. I totally agree. After Jason died, obviously everybody was devastated. But like I said, we've had all this negativity on social media all year. And so then you see all these same people posting, like you said, positive things. And, that could have been anybody. You know what I mean? And think of anybody that you're being negative to. They could go out and die tomorrow. And I just think that it's a shame that we should be like that all the time. We should treat people like that all the time. And, I wrote an article about financial advice for racers a few weeks ago. It's yet to be released. But one of the things I touched on is, we do have a lot of envy in our sport. And, not all you can't just look around the pits and compare yourselves to other drivers. It'll just dig you in a hole, There will always be somebody with more money. There will always be somebody with, whatever. There's never going to be a perfectly even, win distribution, fan distribution, press distribution. It's never going to be fully even. But here's a few things that I've learned. Number one, I've never been to a racetrack that stopped me from going to sign autographs, ever. I've never been to a racetrack that stopped me from, offering to participate in their events. Like you have to initiate some of this stuff, you know what I mean? And you have to just take that step forward and say, like, I'm going to be that person. And and it takes all of, and it takes all of us. And that stuff doesn't equate to happiness either. You know what I mean? You can't look at around the pits and think that somebody else has it all and you don't, like I've always said, some of the happiest I've ever been was back when I was racing go-karts or whatever,
There's always a simpler time that you'll be able to look back on. I mean, in 5 years, you'll be looking back and thinking, God, I miss those times when I was racing in my 360 and, and now I'm racing in NASCAR and making all this money and all that,
Yeah. And, it does come down to the people. I mean, like, really, those memories were because of the people that you're around. I mean, the racing's obviously fantastic, too. Like, but, I think it comes down to the people, and that's really so much of what I do that I try to do to give back, even with the kids, especially in the driver development team. Personally, I don't really feel like I'm doing anything that other people couldn't do, And it doesn't have to be huge. It can be so simple. And so, I guess that would be my wish for the industry, is that we would quit looking around each other in the pits and look outwards across the fence.
Going into the 360s, what do you give the 360 Nationals? What are your goals? Are you walking in expecting a win? Are you going to be happy with the top 10?
I would say we are in it to win it. And for sure, I would say that our goal is to make the A main.
Because you always have you shoot for the win.
Yep.
But realistically where you're at, who you're competing with, and then there's that ever factor of that envelope.
Right.
That when you walk into it, if you can make it into the A main, you've got an opportunity to make something happen. And at the end of the day, if you end up crashing out and finishing last, or if you end up winning it, you had your opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, obviously our goal is to get a good envelope, first and foremost, and really one step at a time. I always tell myself, like, hot laps to heat to feature. And obviously you got qualifying in there too, but if you looked at the end of the night, at the start of the night, like, it all comes down to qualifying. It's going to make or break you.
That was McKenna Haase, driver of the number 55 360 Sprint Car at Knoxville Raceway. If you ever get a chance to meet her, make sure to like her page and seek her out this coming weekend at the 360 Nationals at Knoxville Raceway. She's an amazing person, incredibly talented driver, very, very smart, and she'll take the time to talk to you.
And she's only 21, so don't go looking for a 40-year-old woman.
Yeah, I'm
pretty sure 21 years old.
I'm pretty sure she's 21 going on 40, and just an absolute talent. She's going to be one of the incredible ones in our sport, and we're blessed to have her. We will come back in turn number 4. We'll wrap this baby up on the front stretch.
We all have that coworker that runs their mouth off at how great they are. They shot a 5 under par, 95-mile-an-hour fastball, bench press 375, brah. Wouldn't you love to shut them up by schooling them at Joe's Karting? Council Bluffs' premier indoor karting track, professionally designed so each corner is your opportunity to embarrass your coworker. Call Buddy for your next company outing at 712-256-5278. Joe's Karting, white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue next to AMC 17.
Dan and Dirk are live for one last corner. Give them a call now at 402-573-0590.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Just about 5-6 minutes left in today's show. If you missed any portion of it, we will get it posted on our YouTube channel at about 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. Looking forward at Pocono, Dirk, we got a lot of storylines coming out of Pocono. 13 drivers unable to pass post-qualifying inspection. One of those drivers, or those two drivers, included the guys who were supposed to start on the pole for today's race. Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick both had their times disallowed. They'll move to the back of the field.
Well, I don't call 28th the back, but that's where Kyle Busch is going to start. Harvick will start 29th. But there's just so many other guys that got shoved back there. It's
those were the first two guys that got disqualified, and then 11 other drivers were disqualified. So then you had enlightened me a little bit that then they go off points.
Correct.
13 drivers were disqualified. Who starts 28th and who starts 40th? So it'll be Kyle Busch will start 28th, Kevin Harvick 29th.
Correct, and it goes on back. We don't have details yet. We do know that Harvick had the pole time, but was disallowed due to the laser room. And when I think about it, unless it's another back window situation, I don't know what else that they could possibly change on the whole body of the car during qualifying.
Yeah.
So my guess is that's where it's going to come out, if it ever does come out. Kyle Busch's deal was something with the chassis section. So, there's a lot of stuff you can do. You just, jack a corner somewhere here, there, or whatever. But evidently they found something they didn't like there. And I guess it's probably just all part of we haven't heard the word conspiracy for like 3 weeks now. So it's probably
of course,
conspiracy.
It has nothing to do with all the other drivers were able to pass the OSS just fine. But these 13 guys, they're out to get them. And by the way, the 13 drivers included Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, like we mentioned, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, William Byron, Austin Dillon, Jimmy Johnson, Paul Menard, Ryan Blaney, Eric Almirola, Clint Boyer, Bubba Wallace, and Casey Kane. They will all be moved to the back of the field for failing various areas. Now, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch both had more issues than post-qualifying inspection. They had issues getting through initial inspection more than 2 times, so automatically they're getting assessed a 10-point driver penalty, which, if you take either of those drivers for today's race, say it real quick.
I don't think it was Kyle Busch. I think it was
you're
Casey Kane and Kevin Harvick.
Thank you.
That lost 10
Casey
points.
Kane and Kevin Harvick, if you take either of those drivers for today's race, and let's say that Kevin sweeps the weekend and gets his 60 points, you're only going to get 50 because he's going to get assessed those 10-point penalties.
And who knows if they're going to assess another penalty with the laser station, because they've already said if anybody starts messing with that rear window again, because they had that for 2 or 3 weeks, that the hammer was going to come down.
Yeah,
so
they're pretty sick and tired of that rear window stuff they've been doing. And that OSS, man, I tell you, my eyes were opened up this weekend as we got to actually see it in operation.
Well,
that was really cool.
And the other part that was kind of mind-opening that we didn't know about yet, I mean, I hadn't even heard about it, is talking to one of my official buddies that now there are several teams that have gone ahead and got their own laser station, and like he said, now they're starting to play.
Yeah. Now they're manipulating. They've had 2 weeks, 3 weeks where they're able to start manipulate with these cars and figure out how they can circumvent the system. And this is, again, I can't stress it enough. This is the game we play. NASCAR puts a new system into place.
Makes a new rule.
And the teams have go out there and they spend whatever they can to figure out how to get around it so that they can make their car in the gray zone and be a little bit faster.
Well, and even when we talked to Jimmy Means, one part that was edited on the interview was when he was talking about the new body panel that's supposed to be basically snap together and bolt it together. Mm-hmm. And he says, you do it, and it don't fit.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be one of the pluses when we spent all this money for these new bodies. Yeah. So it's the same thing in Cup. And, again, they're looking for every advantage they can get because it is so competitive. Mm-hmm. But giving them the tools to cheat with is really rough.
All the picks for today's race need to be in by 1:30 today. And, again, if you happen to pick one of those 13 drivers and if NASCAR assesses them a penalty, you will receive that same penalty. Now, unless, again, it's tough for us to say. It's tough for us to say. If they just have their qualifying time disallowed, I don't think that they're going to get a penalty. But if it happens to be for that rear window or something severe, then they will get a penalty come Tuesday or Wednesday. So pick those 13 drivers at your own risk.
Well, and starting in the back at Pocono with the stage racing now where they've got the 2 yellows to tighten up the field is not that big a deal, because by the time they get to the end of the second stage, they'll be in the top 5. I mean, they were that much faster than people.
Today's race is on, I believe it's NBCSN, starting at about 12:30. Picks are due at 1:30. Racing starts at about 2 o'clock. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back next weekend as we will preview the 410 Knoxville Nationals with Terry McCarl. T-Mac will join us, the number 24 car local guy that is going to be doing the Front Row Challenge also. So get out to Knoxville this coming weekend for the 360 Nationals. We'll do it all again next weekend on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.